Hey, it's Anita, and this is the Anita Posh Show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Anita Posh Show, where it is my pleasure to keep you up to date with topics around Bitcoin on a global stage and also the local impact it has on people like you and me. Today, I'm presenting a story and a project from El Salvador in Central America. My guest is Michael Peterson. He is part of Bitcoin Beach, a project which is growing a Bitcoin ecosystem that truly improves lives. Located in a village called El Zonte, 40 businesses are accepting Bitcoin already, and El Zonte's inhabitants use it to buy daily goods, pay for medical care, or utility bills. In a country where the majority of people do not have access to a bank account and the local businesses could never qualify for merchant accounts needed to accept credit cards, Bitcoin is a real great use case here, or it comes to great use, and it shows its potential for enabling more personal, private, and financial freedom for people and how an economy can grow through the use of Bitcoin. And now a short word from my sponsors and then on to the show. But before, I want to tell you, you can listen to my podcast also in the Sphinx Chat app and on the Breeze wallet. The possibility you have is there that you also can send Satoshis over the Lightning Network to me. It's of course voluntarily, but it's a great tool to send money or show your appreciation for the work of podcasters through sending some sats. So now enjoy the interview with Michael. Many people worry about the right storage for their Bitcoin. And yes, holding them isn't always easy. The safest way is offline, physically. That's why Coinfinity developed the card wallet, the professional and easy solution. Order it now at cardwallet.com/Anita and get 20% off. Do you want to stay up to date with the things that happen in Bitcoin from my point of view? Then subscribe to Anita's Weekly, my newsletter with articles, videos, quotes, short tips on how to use Bitcoin and all that for free. Subscribe to Anita's Weekly at anita.link/weekly. Hello, Michael. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Anita. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you because you are part of a very interesting project in South America. It's called Bitcoin Beach, and as far as I understand it, it's a small village in El Salvador that is using Bitcoin and over the Lightning Network. So before we get into this, please introduce yourself to our listeners. Thank you.
Sure. I'm Michael Peterson. I'm one of the team that's down there in Bitcoin Beach creating this circular economy in El Salvador. I joke that, I'm the one they let hang out on Twitter and do interviews while they do the real work. But the majority of our team there are all Salvadorans, and, they kind of decide on the initiatives and drive everything forward. And I get to kind of come along for the ride.
Mm-hmm. And how did you get into Bitcoin?
You know what? I was an economics major in university, and I've always been kind of fascinated, especially like why are some countries prosperous and other ones continue to struggle. It doesn't seem to have anything to do with, the natural resources they have, or even their location in the world, or, what you'd think would be natural advantages. And so I've always been fascinated by just the different economic systems, and I love Latin America too. So I've studied a lot of Latin American history and just seen the hyperinflation that's plagued a lot of Latin America, and how that kind of creates this continued cycle where the rich, always find ways to have their assets in things that don't lose value, but the poor continue to be inflated away. And so when I first heard about Bitcoin, probably in 2010, 2011, I was just kind of fascinated that, hey, maybe this is something that could separate, money and state, as they like to say in Bitcoin. And so from the early days, I just kind of followed along with it. I'm definitely not a tech person, so in the early days, trying to buy Bitcoin or even figure out how to hold it was a little too daunting. So I didn't actually hold any Bitcoin until probably 4 years ago. But from the early days, I've just been fascinated about hey, this is something that could really change the world.
And is Bitcoin Beach a initiative that you support, or is this your full-time job for somebody else, or how does this work?
Yeah, so I have a business in the U.S. that that's how I pay my bills, and the Bitcoin Beach project is more just a labor of love. And so we were already living in El Salvador kind of half the year, before we started this project and doing some economic development work. And so we just saw the opportunity to use Bitcoin, not just as, a source of funding, but as a way to, really get the local people to be thinking about what is money, how to save, how to be kind of forward looking and have low time preference. And so that's kind of how it started. And then, to be honest, it's just taken off way better than I expected. The use of it is, probably 10 times what I thought it would be at this point. And everybody says, oh, Bitcoin will never be used for buying coffee or for small purchases. It's too hard. It takes too long. But there's solutions for all those things. And we have people that, a lot of them only have first, second grade educations. They're living, some of them even without electricity, but they have smartphones and they're using Bitcoin on a daily basis. And so it's been real fun kind of seeing, the future play out in front of us there.
I can imagine that, yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the country, like El Salvador and its history? I think there has been a war like 30, 20 years ago. Can you tell us a little bit about the living conditions there?
Yeah, El Salvador has historically, had a big disparity in wealth. And so there was kind of the upper class, or, it's a handful of families that have kind of controlled the majority of the land and the wealth in El Salvador. And so that's kind of led to some cycles of poverty that, followed by revolution, and you kind of have this kind of ongoing cycle. And so the last of that was, I think the war ended in the late 90s, or the early 90s, I believe. They had a civil war that went on for, I think, about 20 years. And so it really devastated the country. Prior to that, El Salvador was one of the stronger economies in Central America. And then coming out of that, they were one of the weaker. You had, about 20% of their population fled the country, most of them coming to the U.S. And so that kind of continued the cycle even after the war. A lot of those in the U.S., because of the areas they were living in the U.S., a lot of times were challenging areas. There was a lot of Salvadoran gangs that formed in the U.S. And then in the late 90s, a lot of those gang members were deported back to El Salvador. And so you had these Salvadoran gangs that actually, were created in the U.S. and then were imported back into El Salvador. And for the last 20 years, the gangs have had a huge role in the country and a huge sway on things. And so you kind of went from the Civil War to the gang crisis. And, all of these have economic implications, especially for the poorest people. And so we're just, I feel, coming out of that now and seeing El Salvador really start to make some good forward progress. You have the government there has been, making some positive pushes to embrace new technology and to bring in tourism and to try to grow the economy. And we see Bitcoin as playing a huge role in that. And hopefully in the future, we would love to see El Salvador be the first country to embrace Bitcoin as, probably not the only currency, but as an official currency.
What is the average income in El Salvador for people?
The average income, the average wages are probably anywhere from $300 to $500 a month. That would be kind of an average wage. And so it's very challenging for the people there to make it. The costs aren't really that much lower than they are in the U.S. I mean, obviously for rent they are, but for food and clothing and all, the necessities of life, the costs are not that much lower. And so Yeah, it's definitely a struggle there for people to kind of make it month to month.
And the national currency, what is it called, and how is inflation in the country?
So their national currency is a currency that at one time was doing really well and was very strong, but recently the central bank has just keeps printing more and more money and deflating it, and that national currency is actually the U.S. dollar. So I say that only halfway in jest, but yeah, they dollarized their economy back in 2000. I think basically to tie the hands of their own central bank so that they couldn't just print. But unfortunately, they chose another central bank that's decided to follow that same path.
So basically, people have a low income, high costs, and at the same time, they need to use the US dollars. I mean, is the US dollar easy to get for people in the country, or is this also a problem?
No, the dollar's easy to get. I mean, it is the official currency, so there's nothing else. Everything
Okay.
transacts in U.S. dollars. So it's the original. Historically they had a currency called the cologne, but they got rid of that in 2000 when they dollarized the economy, and so yeah, everything's dollars. The only one unique thing is you'll see dollar coins there. The U.S. tried to introduce dollar coins, I think like 15 years ago, and nobody wanted them, so they shipped them all down to El Salvador. So that's where you'll find all the dollar coins.
Okay, so you get all the bad things exported, basically, like the gangs and the coins.
Exactly.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so what are the basic use cases for people in El Salvador for Bitcoin?
Just to transact in daily life. Banking is very challenging for the people. There's no bank in the town where we're at. There's not even a dollar ATM. There is a Bitcoin ATM now, but I think it's the only city in the world that has a Bitcoin ATM and not a fiat ATM. But yeah, so there's no way really for them to bank, and so for those who do have bank accounts, they have to take the bus for at least a half an hour, probably an hour, into the neighboring kind of bigger town. And for a lot of them, they can't even open bank accounts because they either don't have the right identification or they work in the informal economy, and so they aren't able to open bank accounts. And then for a lot of the stores, kind of same thing. Either they don't have bank accounts, or if they do, they can't accept credit cards because they don't have the credit profile that makes it worth the banks wanting to deal with them. And so everything has to be done in cash. They have the challenges of making sure they have change all the time. They have the challenges of having cash on hand at the end of the night that they're concerned could be stolen from them. And most of them can't take credit cards, and the ones that do, the credit card companies really stick it to them. They pay usually between 6 to 7% in fees, and so in an economy where people are barely making it, a lot of times that means the credit card companies take the only profits that are there. And so we've seen Bitcoin come in and basically provide all these things for people. Now it's their savings account, it's their method of transaction mobily. They can send mobile payments. It allows the stores to, keep their money in a secure way without having to take the bus to the bank every day. And so for a lot of people, it's just the way they transact in daily life.
And I also think a lot of money is coming through remittances to the country.
Yeah, I've heard ranges anywhere from 20 to 24% of the Salvadoran GDP is coming from remittances, which that in itself is shows you that there's some challenges and some issues, and we hope that'll go down over time as the Salvadoran economy grows. But for now, we're really focused on making it easier for people to get support from their families living in the U.S. or Europe, and make sure they hold on to more of it. When people send money through Western Union, especially if it's for smaller amounts, a crazy amount is siphoned off in fees, and it's also just a logistical nightmare for them to have to go pick it up and take the bus there, take the bus back, spend money and time doing that. Where with Bitcoin, now they can just call their son up in the U.S. and say, hey, can you send me $20 in Bitcoin? And 30 seconds later, it's in the mom's mobile wallet that she can take down to the store and buy tortillas or milk or whatever she needs.
And I can also imagine that it's dangerous to go to the Western Union branch or something like that to collect the remittance.
Yeah, I think like anywhere, it's often unwise to carry large amounts of cash on you, and especially if you're going to have to take public transport. And so that's a concern of people to have to to travel carrying large amounts of cash. The possibility that somebody could see them coming out of the Western Union office and follow them. And so with Bitcoin, they don't have to worry about that anymore.
So, how did this initiative start? I mean, who had the idea, and what were the plans? And yeah, how did it start? And how did people like? How did they react to it in the first place?
So it started. We were already doing some economic development projects in the town, just because that's where we live, and we love the people there, and we want to have a positive impact. They've been so accepting of our family and welcoming us, and so we were already working on some educational initiatives and some other things. And as I got further and further into Bitcoin, I'd have various people contact me, ask me questions about Bitcoin. And we had another organization contact me, and, they had a Bitcoin donation, and they were thinking about how they could use it. And kind of long story short, through that, we were connected with some Bitcoin donors. There were a couple people that, had a significant amount of Bitcoin gains that they were sitting on, and they wanted to see it impact the world for good. And so they, asked us, hey, what are you guys doing down there? And do you think you can incorporate Bitcoin into it? And this is what we want to see happen. We want to see it be used in real ways. They don't want it just being cashed out to dollars, and, that doesn't really solve anything. And so we put together this 3-year proposal to basically Bitcoinize the village that we're in, and kind of from that move further out in El Salvador and see Bitcoin used in a circular way. We want it to be spent at the local store, then they have that local store pay their employee, then their employee uses it to buy, from a different store. Now they can use it to even pay their kids, school tuition or their water bill or their electric bill. And so the idea is that, this is not something that it's just going to sit in cold storage somewhere, for their grandkids. We want to see them, really utilizing the Bitcoin rails and what we believe Bitcoin was designed for, to improve their daily life. And so, of course, like all Bitcoiners, we believe that Bitcoin's the hardest money and that it's going to go up over time. And so that your savings should be held in Bitcoin, but we don't subscribe to the hodl only, kind of philosophy that you should never spend your Bitcoin. We really think that spending Bitcoin increases the ecosystem. It allows you to, to really utilize the benefits of the Bitcoin rails, and it can improve lives of, the most vulnerable in the current economic system that have kind of been locked out.
Yeah, which is in my opinion also the biggest use case. I mean, we in the Western world are very privileged, and we would not really need Bitcoin. Okay, I mean, still it's good to have it as an alternative, no question there. Yeah, it's also for us here a big improvement on financial freedom. But I think for people in Africa, in South America, and in less privileged countries, Bitcoin is a great way to improve their personal living situation. And how big is the community there? I mean, how many people live in the area, and how many shops and merchants are already involved?
So there's about 3,000 residents in El Zonte, where we're at. It's kind of a tourist town that attracts both international and domestic tourists. And so the population swells on the weekends when everybody comes down to go to the beach. And so there's actually a lot more businesses in town than you'd usually have for such a small village. So we have about 40 businesses that are using Bitcoin in this point in El Zonte. And so it's pretty significant portion. It's definitely the majority of the businesses in El Zonte now are using Bitcoin. Some of them, it makes up the majority of their revenue.
And what are the hurdles? Like, are there any technical hurdles? I mean, you said some people don't even have electricity, but they have smartphones. How does the internet connection look like?
Yeah, we've had a lot of kind of hurdles along the way, and kind of one at a time we found ways around them. So initially we were doing everything on chain, And at that time, the fees were really low. Average fees people were paying were about 25 cents. And so, it wasn't ideal, but it still worked. If they were making at least like a $10 purchase, it wasn't, too much of a percentage of their purchase being paid in fees. But we saw that start to ramp up a couple months into the project. And so we at that time moved everything over to the Lightning Network. And that made just a huge difference, not just in the fees, but also the transactions are confirmed right away. Kind of through that, we developed a partnership with a wallet developer, and they've developed the wallet specifically for Bitcoin Beach. And so we've been working with Galloy Money, and it's been really neat to see, kind of the coders and the engineers really spend some time to see how people at the lowest economic level can use Bitcoin or what their needs are going to be. And so a lot of times you have, people in the design or the coding world, they kind of live in their own little bubble, and they, the things that they think people will want or that are important, a lot of times just don't translate. And the things they think, well, that's self-explanatory, or why would people need that? They just don't know because they live in a totally different world. They speak a different language. And so it's been neat seeing this team from Galloy. They've spent a month in El Zonte. They've seen how people are using it. They've designed a lot of kind of unique features. One is like there's a map feature within the wallet that shows all the stores that accept Bitcoin, and people can kind of just tap on the icon in that map and pay the store directly from kind of the map without them even have to, spin up a Lightning invoice or anything like that. And so it's been really neat to see it all kind of grow organically, within the community, designed for the people who are actually using it.
Great. Can you spell the company or the wallet? What's the name of the wallet?
Yeah, so the wallet is just the Bitcoin Beach wallet. Like if you're looking it up in an app store, it's available to everybody except people in the U.S. because our U.S. government likes to make things challenging for people, so we've excluded U.S. citizens. But you should be able to access it. And the company is Galloy. It's Galloy. I always joke with them. I'm like, is that the right pronunciation? Because it's a French. The founder was French, and so he's like, that's the American pronunciation. So go ahead and say it like that.
Okay, I didn't know that before. That's cool. I will look it up. And I think you also work together with Ellen Strike. Is that right?
Yeah, we've developed a really great relationship with Strike, specifically focused on the remittances, and now Strike is actually employing a huge number of people in El Zonte. They've opened an office there with us. We have a shared office space, and they're kind of bringing on more team members every week. And they've actually been the number one app in El Salvador for like the last month. It's just crazy. It's like, I think they're getting like 10,000 downloads a day. And, there's only 7 million people in El Salvador. So it's there's a huge percentage of the Salvadoran population now that has Strike on their phone. And, the nice, unique thing about Strike is it's a good gateway to get people using Bitcoin, because they can still choose to, hold their Bitcoin or receive their Bitcoin transactions converted to a dollar stablecoin. So for some of them, that's easier at first when they kind of are getting their mind kind of wrapped around Bitcoin. And so it gives them their first exposure. It also makes it easy for their relatives that are in the U.S. because they can just connect their U.S. bank card to it, and they don't have to know anything about Bitcoin. But now they can be sending, Bitcoin remittance payments to their family in El Zonte, and, they can send it to them, and a minute later they have it, and 30 seconds later they can be using it at the local store. So we're super excited to have Strike down there and to see just how much they've blown up.
And how does this work? The people in the US, when they connect it to their bank account, do they have to do anything special, like another KYC process or something like that, or not?
They do have to go through KYC. I mean, Strike is, they've jumped through all the hurdles to be a U.S. registered, company, and so there is a KYC, process. It's not super invasive. Of course, like all Bitcoiners, I would prefer there not be any KYC, but you also know that's the reality of the world we live in, at least for now. And so, yeah, they have to go through that process, but usually it takes 5 minutes, and then once they're set up and once they have their bank card connected, the next time they want to send something, they can do it in 15 seconds.
Cool. And on the recipient side, do people, if they sign up for the Alien Strike, it's just a wallet, I guess?
Yeah, so people can decide on the receiving side if they want to if they want to hold it as dollars, they'll receive it in their Strike wallet. Strike converts it automatically to a stable coin when they receive it, and so. But they could also receive it in the Bitcoin Beach wallet or Wallet of Satoshi or Blue Wallet or a number of the other great Lightning wallets that are out there and hold it as Bitcoin. And so we're seeing people now, they'll kind of use the Strike and wallet for funds that maybe they need to spend it next week and they don't want to be exposed to the volatility of things, and so they'll hold it in their Strike wallet. And we actually have the Strike team has come down twice to El Salvador now, and they've spent probably more than a month down there, and kind of same thing. They've come down, they're seeing how people are actually using it. They are going back to their engineers and their designers and making adaptations for how people in the developing world are going to use this product. And I think that's really crucial for any company that, everybody talks about banking the unbanked. They talk about the potential of Bitcoin, but if you really want to do that, you have to put the time and effort in and see how people are going to actually use it. And so we're very thankful that Strike's been willing to do that. We know they're like this huge growing company right now, and they have all these things on their plate. And so the fact that they're willing to come down and spend a month in El Salvador and walk through these little details, it really means a lot to the community there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really super important. I also saw that last year when I visited Zimbabwe, and I didn't know, for instance, that if you have a smartphone and are connected to the internet, people only buy like a WhatsApp bundle, for instance. So they only can use WhatsApp. They can't use the World Wide Web to download a wallet from the Play Store or something like that, which I think is very important for the adoption of Bitcoin wallets in the country. Yeah? So I think it's really important to go there and talk with people how they want to use it and how their living situations also are, yeah?
No, I definitely agree with that. And I think the developing world is really going to be where we're going to see the innovation in Bitcoin happening. Like you were mentioning earlier, those of us who lived in more developed countries, we have banking systems that more or less work. We might not always be happy with them, but we can send money from one place to another. We can access our money. But so people will say, Bitcoin is a solution in search of a problem. But that's just because they live in a little bubble. They don't realize for the vast majority of the world, they don't have any of these rails, and Bitcoin will, and for most of them, those aren't coming for decades, outside of Bitcoin. But with Bitcoin, because it breaks down barriers, because it helps everybody in the world be able to interact with each other. You don't have all these different walled gardens. It can, in a year, achieve what could take decades with a traditional banking system.
Mm-hmm. And when did Bitcoin Beach start? Last year, or when did you start?
Yeah, so Bitcoin Beach has been in existence for just over a year and a half. So it's crazy when I think about it. I feel like we've been doing it forever, but I look, how fast it's happened and how quickly things have changed. I think sometimes, like watching your own kids grow up, you don't feel like it's making huge like jumps and moves, but somebody who hasn't seen your kids for a year and a half sees them and they're like, oh my gosh, they're like, crazy. They're grown-ups now. And so I had that same experience with Peter McCormick, because he came down when we were first starting, and he thought it was neat, but it was this kind of little niche project. And I think the reality is he didn't think it would kind of turn into that much. And he came back this last month, and I could tell he just kept saying how blown away he was that like this had turned into this real crazy big circular economy in El Zonte. And it was so that was encouraging for us to see, from an outsider perspective, just that something real is happening here, and something that hopefully the rest of the world will take notice of.
Mm-hmm. And what's the reaction of tourists that come to El Zonte and don't know about Bitcoin Beach, and suddenly everywhere you see signs Bitcoin accepted? What do those people say?
They love it. They'll take pictures next to the signs, and you interact with them. They'll say, hey, we're from Italy, and this is the last thing we expected. We can't even do this in Italy, but we come to El Salvador and we can pay with, everything in Bitcoin. Next time we don't have to worry about trying to exchange all our money. We'll just load up our Bitcoin wallet and, hop on the plane and don't have to worry or deal with any of that. And so this next week, El Salvador is holding the qualifying final surfing event for the Olympics. And so this is the final event for who's going to go on to the Olympics in Tokyo. And it's neat seeing just all these people from around the world come in, and just their minds are kind of blown when they're looking around like, wait, we can pay with everything with Bitcoin here? And so I'm really excited to see how the word gets out just by word of mouth from all the surfers that are visiting for this event.
It's a great surfing spot, yeah, of course. Is it also something for beginners? Because I actually think about coming too now in July or August, maybe.
Yeah, it's actually a perfect place for beginners. There's a number of great surf schools in El Zonte where we're at, and a lot of them take Bitcoin. So make sure you patronize one of those when you come. In fact, even one of the people on our Bitcoin Beach team, his name's Roman, he has a surf school. I think it's Little Fish Surf School, I think it is. So you'll have to look that up. But yeah, it's a great place to learn how to surf, and I can't even totally distill why, but it's just one of those amazing communities that people come planning on visiting for a couple days, and 6 months later they're still there. So you got to be careful; you might get stuck there.
Yeah, maybe. And what are the other things one can do there? I mean, do you, for instance, also have something like a co-working space where podcasters like me can work?
I'm glad you asked that, because we actually have just kind of rolled that out. We have a co-working space where we have the people in the strike team are working out of, and then we have a couple other companies that have hired locals from the community to provide support roles. And part of our development, we call it Hope House. It's kind of the center for all our educational initiatives, and then the top floor is the workspace. And we did develop a podcasting booth in that space. We want visiting podcasters to come in and to get the word out about what we're doing there. And so hopefully by the time you come, it'll be all finished. We're working on the sound, the soundproofing aspects of it and all that right now, but it should be dialed in by the time you're there.
Wow, that sounds perfect, actually. Yeah.
Yep.
So, and I saw on the website you also have a donation or a crowdfunding running. Is that true?
Yeah, we've developed kind of a ongoing sponsorship and relationship with the Salvadoran surf team in El Salvador. Great talent, but historically hasn't been able to get the financial support to compete internationally. And so, being Bitcoin Beach, myself being a surfer, surfing being such an integral part of the Salvadoran culture, we really wanted to focus on supporting the surf team there. And so we have actually sponsored the Surf Federation, specifically coming into this contest. All the members that were going to be competing have been receiving a monthly stipend in Bitcoin so they can focus on their training. And we also have Bitcoin prize money for the contest they sponsor throughout the year. And unfortunately, there was a huge tragedy that struck us, I think it was about a month ago. One of the talented young ladies that was on this team, she was struck by lightning while surfing. Just this kind of freak, tragic accident. And so we've actually been rallying the Bitcoin community to kind of come around her family, but also the El Salvador in general, and kind of use this as an opportunity to show the Bitcoin community's support for El Salvador. And we're raising funds to build a surf training center and provide kind of ongoing funding for the surfers there to be able to compete internationally, pay for their airfare, those sorts of things. And so we have a campaign right now. It's if you go to www.katieDiazsurf.com, that's where you can find the link to donate, and of course on our Bitcoin Beach handle on Twitter. A lot of times that's the easiest way, but yeah, we're going to build a fully funded Bitcoin surf training center, and we want kind of the Bitcoin community to see the El Salvadoran surf team as their team. Like that's we don't have our own country, we don't have our own borders, the Bitcoin community, but we can have our own surf team. So we're trying to rally people around that.
Yeah, I like that. I like building communities around sports and Bitcoin. There's also in Europe Team Satoshi. So we're a decentralized sports team also to raise awareness for Bitcoin. So that are great initiatives. Yeah. And
That's great. That's great.
And do you also have a website where people can find informations?
Yeah, our website is just bitcoinbeach.com. I'll admit I'm not the best at keeping it up to date, so I'm working on that. But definitely on Twitter is where to find the latest stuff. But if you go to the website, you can find kind of more of the history and the overall layout. We have, you can see who the team is there, look at their biographies and that sort of thing. So definitely encourage people to check out the website.
Mm-hmm, super. I will put all the links into the show notes. Okay, so what is the goal for 2021 and for the coming years? I mean, what are the big goals for your project?
So we pretty much have hyper Bitcoinization in El Zonte right now. I mean, the majority of the people are using Bitcoin in some fashion. And so right now we're expanding outside of El Zonte and really focused on the coastal region there. And so we really want to see this kind of grow organically with El Zonte as kind of the hub. And so our goal by the end of the year would have this same kind of adoption and kind of the entire municipality and kind of region that we're in. And then kind of from there, see all of El Salvador. We really think there is potential for El Salvador to be the first country in the world that adopts Bitcoin as an official currency. As we mentioned earlier, they don't have their own currency, so they don't have to worry about, competing with Bitcoin. They're already using the US dollar. And so if they were to adopt Bitcoin as an official payment rail, just imagine all the tech and Bitcoin companies that would want to locate their headquarters in El Salvador, that would want to have offices in El Salvador. And it could really put El Salvador on the map as far as a forward-looking country where people should invest. And so that's kind of our focus, is that, within the next year, there'll be some kind of major announcement that Bitcoin is now recognized as an official currency. Maybe the central bank puts their reserves in it. But more than that, we want to see, there to be dozens of Bitcoin related companies that are hiring people, providing good paying jobs, and seeing El Salvador kind of lead the world forward in Bitcoin.
Yeah, that sounds cool. And are you already in contact with local authorities?
Yeah, we've had a number of meetings with the members of the government. We've met with the president's Minister of the Economy, with the Minister of Tourism, with head of CIFCO, which is kind of their trade organization. And so they're definitely willing to listen. We haven't seen any promises or any major steps forward on it, but the current administration of the government is very forward looking. It's a very young team and they really want to embrace tech. And so we could see this being something that they chose to adopt. And, we also want to make sure they know what we're doing, so they know they don't have to be afraid of it. This is all community development work. It's all stuff to better the community. It's not a business. We're not making any money off it. Not the business is wrong, but we just want to know that, this isn't something that we're, trying, some pyramid scheme or anything. You have all those bad connotations that come with Bitcoin. And so we want to show to them, hey, this can bring real good paying jobs and real great publicity for the country. So hopefully they'll get on board.
Yeah, and it's also that you don't go there to exploit the country. You want to bring them possibilities. I mean, you don't take anything, yeah?
Exactly. And instead of, a lot of times the developing world is copying the developed world. This is a chance for them to lead the way. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, that's really exciting. So thank you very much, Michael. Is there anything that we left out that you want to tell our audience?
I don't think so. Just that the other great thing about Bitcoin Beach is just the weather's great year round and the surf is good and it's just a great place to be. So we encourage people to come visit and look forward to hearing how your visit there goes. But yeah, it's a beautiful place, especially in today's environment where, things can kind of be locked down and people can be less social. You don't really see that happening in El Zonte. It's still, there's a lot of freedom and movement, and you're out in the outdoors, and so it's low risk. And so we'd encourage people to come visit.
Super. Yeah. Thank you very much for this conversation. It was very interesting, and I will definitely look out, plan my trip there.
All right, you'll have to post some pictures of you surfing. So,
of course, no, I don't know if this is a good picture. I mean, I will more swim than surf, I guess.
No, we got to get you out there on a surfboard. So
I'm more into cycling, but I guess that's not really a good thing there to do, is it?
You know what? There's a surprising number of cyclists there. To me, it seems like not the greatest climate for it, because it's it's perfect hammock climate. But I see people there going up and down the hills on their bikes, so it seems to be a growing sport there.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and see you the next time. Maybe even someday in El Salvador.
All right, perfect. We look forward to having you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for joining the Anita Posch Show today to learn more about Bitcoin. You can find the show notes for this conversation on anita.link/show. If you want to get the best stories in Bitcoin from my point of view in your mailbox, go to anita.link/weekly and subscribe. And if you have a question or just want to send me some feedback, drop me a line at hello@anitaposch.com. See you next week when it's time for the Anita Posch Show. Music, start with yes, delicate beats. Content, idea and production, Anita Posch.